Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Generally Irritable. Happy Friday. This is the last episode that we're going to do on a Friday night. We decided next week we're going to start Thursdays. We're testing out days. First, Monday was no good because it interfered with Burlington City Council. And now Friday, like, who wants to be watching political podcasts on a Friday night? We should all be out like dancing and doing stuff, not being boring and nerding out. But since you're here, let's be boring and nerd out with my special guest this evening, Mr. H Brooke Paige. Thank you, Mr. Paige. I'm not supposed to call you Mr. Paige. Thank you for being on, Brooke. I appreciate you coming on to talk about elections in Vermont. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. We're going to see how quickly and if we get booted off of the social medias for like community guideline strikes or whatever, because you're not allowed to talk about election integrity these days. But we're going to do it anyway, whether people like it or not.
I promise not to be boring, and I promise not to get us kicked off. Oddly enough, for all of the mischief that I make, I've never been throttled or kicked off or sent to Facebook jail. So I know. I probably will now because I've bragged about it.
We've jinxed it, haven't we? Hey, Michael Allen, thanks for being here with us this evening. As usual, anybody watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, feel free to ask questions of myself or Mr. Brooke. He is probably, and anybody can try to argue with me if they want to. Are you the person who knows the most about election law in the state of Vermont?
There's probably some lawyers over at the Attorney General's office that could easily rival me. But I suspect that I'm as knowledgeable as any of the folks at Secretary of State's office. And most certainly more knowledgeable than Jim Condos. I'm quite confident of that. You know,
I think we can probably agree. Mr. Condos may know what the rules are.
Secretary Condos, always
Secretary Condos. Thank you.
We have great respect for the office, maybe not so much for the man.
The man. So Secretary Condos may know election law well. I just don't think he cares. I don't think he's concerned with it.
Oh, I think he cares a great deal. I think he cares to make sure that he fashions it into a vehicle for getting Democrats and progressives elected. I don't think he cares a whole lot about credibility or trustworthiness or voter confidence, but he certainly cares about getting lots and lots of Democratic and progressive votes stuffed into the ballot box. I can assure you of that.
I want you before we really start digging into the law and your lawsuit and kind of what we as Vermonters need to be thinking about and pushing back on in the near future, you said something really important in that sentence, and that was voter confidence.
Exactly.
I get when I was a candidate, I'll just say from my experience as a candidate, when I was walking around knocking on doors and talking to people, going to different political events and participating, I talked to so many people who said, probably hundreds at least of people who said, you know what, I don't vote anymore. I don't care anymore because I know it's all, rigged or it's stupid or it doesn't matter. They're all liars anyway. Like, you just hear you get this sense that everyone is very apathetic or doesn't trust the system. And so they say, well, why bother?
I have run in every election since 2012, and at least for one office and sometimes for more than one offices. My record, I think, was 7 offices in the one election. But the one thing I always do is, whoops, something came up.
There we go. Nope.
Excuse me. one thing that I always do is I always go out and get my own petitions signed. And yes, it's thousands of signatures when you're running for lots of offices. But I do this, so that at least 1,000 people know who the heck I am.
Yep.
But more importantly, to get some feeling of what they think about me, about the elections, about whatever. And so when I've been out there getting all these signatures, quite often I'll go up to people who I know are good, reliable, Vermont citizens, and I'll ask them to sign. And they go, "I'd really like to sign, but I'm not registered." And I always carry a big, thick pile of voter registration forms with me.
Oh, that's smart.
And they go, or in many cases, they go, "Oh, no. I used to be registered, but I just don't vote anymore because I don't, because I believe it's rigged. I believe my vote doesn't count." And so, and so I've gotten this feeling. I've also had some people, I remember one woman distinctly who was working at the little Jiffy Mart here in East Barry. And I went up to her, and she's a very nice lady and seemed to be very articulate and well-versed. And I asked her, and she says, "Oh, no, I'm not registered." And I pull out my registration form. She says, "Oh, no, you don't understand. I don't keep track of the news and I don't follow politics. And I think it would be unfair if I were to vote." And how do you argue with that? Well, Jim Condos would say, "Well, no, we got to get you signed up here. Just if you don't know what to do, check those names that have the D after them, for crying out loud. That'll fix it right up." And so you're right. The Mr. Condos to get lots and lots of ballots voted, and I don't think you can't say that he intentionally desires to have one person grab 2 or 3 or 4 ballots laying there by the mailbox in the apartment building and score them all up and send them on in. But certainly based upon the laws that he's getting the legislature to pass and his total lack of any meaningful enforcement of the few scrappy laws we do have, he certainly is encouraging it. I always like to think about this as if picture Jim Condos as a bank regulator for the state of Vermont, and he goes to the banks. You really don't have to count the money in the safe every night, and keeping all those books and handing out receipts when people give you money, and keeping track of what's going on, and locking the safe at night or even the front door. Everybody in Vermont is so trustworthy. There's never any problem. And he's doing the equivalent with our election. We had the election this time, and within, I think it's 30 days, they're supposed to have a audit, and they didn't do it until like a couple of weeks ago. Of course, the election's long over. The people have been installed, whatever. And
wait, did you say there's a law? Oh, whoa, that is some echo. Are you hearing that?
No, I'm good. We sound like we're good to go.
Okay. So there is a law. So there's a law that says there was supposed to be an audit conducted on the election within 30 days.
There absolutely is. And I'm looking, I printed it up here and I could give you the actual law. If I just take a moment, but yeah, it may be somewhat less than it sounds. But it's primarily when they started using the tabulators, it was to test to make sure the tabulators, weren't in. Now there's all sorts of problems with tabulators everywhere. I understand. I think somewhere in New Hampshire, if ballots were folded and unfolded, the tabulator was counting whatever was in the fold as being a valid vote. But here in Vermont, the idea was primarily to hand count. Select, I think it was 5 or 6 districts, to run the votes through the machine again, make sure that count matches up with the count that was run on election night, and then to have people go through and manually count all of those votes for those little districts to make sure that everything kind of squared up. But people hear that and say, "Oh, he's not going to, conduct the audit," and it sounds like a bigger thing. And people go, "Well, why aren't we counting the ballot? Counting the ballots to make sure this is all good." And who knows? Maybe they were fearful with all the other information information about Dominion voting systems out of it. But understand the recount is only double checking the machine's ability to take a peek at the pieces of paper with the little chits marked in and see if it adds up. Nobody during the audit is saying, 50 of these ballots look like the same exact person scored them exactly the same way. And nobody's going, who sent all of these ballots in and where did they come from? The only other check they probably have is that, if there's 100 ballots, they probably want to make sure the voter checklist only has 100 names scored on it. But beyond that, we have no idea who voted the ballots, who put the ballots in, or anything. And we'll talk more about that.
So all we know, wow, that is really, hey,
all we know
folks,
is that the
hold on, Brooke. Folks watching, let me know if you can hear that, because we will try to fix whatever it is that's going on. But I'm getting this wicked feedback in my headphones. So somebody comment, let me know. Okay, so what you're saying is that there is supposed to be an audit to double check that the readers, a selection, right? And I'm an accountant. I know what auditing is. We go in to a business and we want to check and verify that whatever you say your books say is accurate. And we do that by going in and taking a sample of your invoices and a sample of your expenses. And we go, okay, prove this, prove this, prove this. So the audit that's required by the state of Vermont technically is only supposed to just double check that the number of ballots that went through the machine, or is it supposed to hand check the ballot to see that the votes were correct?
Part of this, right? You run the ballot, or the count that day matches up with the count on election day. You then have two individuals, probably on the Board of Civil Authority in the little towns, go through and manually count up all the votes for those ballots and make sure the numbers are the same or come close. But what's not going on is checking to see, who mailed them in, was the person that mailed them in actually the person that was supposed to. There's no validation of who voted the ballots, just that there's 100 ballots there, and these are the little chit marks that were marked off, and that's kind of the basis of our problem here, is that nobody knows. And now, up until the 20, Vermont had the most open and accessible election system in the country. We had early voting without needing to, or early and absentee voting without any necessity of having the excuse, like, oh, I have to work, oh, grandma's sick, oh, whatever. And whereas many states that allow for early and absentee voting, you have to have a valid reason. I'm a doctor and I'm performing surgery that day. And but in Vermont, no excuse is required. And so it's easy as possible to get the vote early and absentee. But you do have to contact the town clerk in order to get the absentee ballot. And the town clerk, he or she, mails the ballot out to you. And this is an important thing because, first of all, you as the voter are expecting the ballot to come to your mailbox.
And it's establishing, wow, that is really not good.
And secondly,
sorry, Brooke, I'm still getting some crazy audio issues here. Do me a favor, would you, Brooke? Since I know I told you that you needed to wear earbuds, but try taking your earbuds out.
Okay, now I can't hear anything.
Oh, that's right, because it still wasn't going to work, right? Okay, put them back in.
Yeah, the earbuds override my
your other stuff.
The earbuds in, I don't have my speaker.
Yes. Okay, so we'll just try to get through it. Sorry for the audio issues, guys. I don't know what's up. It might be the thunderstorm going overhead right now, and it's just interfering with all the electronics.
It's 2021, and we're still in the dark ages of electronics here.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so anyway,
so let's get back on track here.
So we used to have a really good system. You had to request.
Let's talk about what we had until 2021. So you could go in, you could contact the clerk. The clerk would send you out a ballot. You're looking for that ballot. And after you've scored it up and mailed it back, the clerk's expecting it back. So when the ballot comes back, the ballot comes back in. The clerk goes, "Makes sense to me. This must be Johnny Q. Public here that asked me for a ballot."
Yep.
And so we don't have that anymore. We're just going to take everybody that's on the checklist and send them out a ballot.
And now that's a problem right off the bat, because I know at least in Burlington, when we had the city council election last town hall, so last March. And I was talking to our ward clerk, and he said that he believed the Burlington voter registry was at least 25% inflated. So he said at least 20, and that was his, and this is not a right wing. This was not a right winger. He's a total Democrat progressive guy. And he said, no, we know for a fact that it's at least 25% inflated, but it's probably more. And
I've heard from people out there, I mean, not just in big cities or not just in the college towns, we can talk about that more in a second, but people who have moved around the state 2 or 3 times. Not only at their house are they receiving their ballot because they've asked the town clerk to send it to them, but they're getting the ballots from the past 2 or if it's a rental property, especially the past 2 or 3 people that used to live there. Plus, I had one fellow tell me that his ballots that had been sent to his 2 prior residences were forwarded to him. He wound up with like a whole little pot full of ballots and
of his own. Wow, that is wild.
3 of them with his own name and 2 with somebody else that used to live where he lived. Now he's an honest fellow, so he's just going to vote his own ballot. But somebody that's a little more nefarious, they've got a little honeypot right there.
Well, and that's what I'm going, and now, I need to have my button. I just got a thing that says that's racist. I have my own little jingle for everything is racist, because my understanding is
somebody just said that my statement was racist.
No. I'm saying I have a little jingle that says everything is racist, because my understanding is the new argument for cleaning up the voter rolls is that it's racist. Like if you clean up the voter rolls, it disenfranchises not white people. And I was like, well, the majority of the state is white people. So automatically, it's going to disenfranchise more white people, because it's like 95% white people.
Well, 2021, everything is racist.
Everything is racist. Okay. Really quickly, Brooke, Ray asked a question. I know several people who said they moved. Oh, wait. Have we heard any information about New Hampshire folding ballot errors?
While I promised to be like a laser beam on Vermont here, it is interesting that the Dominion machines have now found to have a issue with if the ballots were printed where one of the lines on the ballot, where the little things you grid in, the little chits, is right on the fold, that the machines apparently see that shadow and count whoever's name is on the fold. While we're talking about the voting machines, and Vermont uses Dominion voting systems, which is everybody should have heard that name by now, because every place where there's problems, Texas, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, all of them have Dominion voting machines. Now, interestingly, when this was brought up just before the election, Chris Winters, who is Secretary Condos's second in command there, he boldly got out in the media and said, "Oh, well, we don't have a problem here because our Dominion voting machines are really, really old." And it was the first time I ever heard anybody say, "Don't worry, because our ancient and archaic technology is so old that it probably counts okay." And you're going, every place else you hear about the 30-year-old computers they're using down at the Labor Department, and they're sending out your Social Security number, address, and name to every Indian or Pakistani hacker that happens to get on the internet. And it's amazing where everything else that's being done today, is so subject to being hacked with and troubled with. But don't worry about our elections because we're good to go.
And here's the thing, Brooke, this is what's super funny. I remember after
I find none of this funny. I mean, we're laughing, but it's gallows humor.
Oh, yeah, exactly. After the 2016 election, there was a spate of all of these news programs doing deep dives on Dominion voting machines and voting machines. They even went as far as to demonstrate how you would hack into a voting machine and change the little cards or tabulators or whatever the information is, because they were trying to prove that Donald Trump, lost or won by cheating. That was the whole point. And now this election, they're like, oh, no, but this was the safest election ever. And there's no way that there could have been any tampering with the voting machines. It's like, well, wait a second. 4 years ago, you said the only reason Donald Trump was because he cheated. Now, 4 years later, you want me to believe that you fixed all that?
The Russians just changed their side. They just, the thing is that everything you hear about these machines is subject to interpretation. You hear that, they only use fresh flashcards when they're downloading the information, and the information never goes over the internet. Well, when they pull the flashcards, how do you have the information instantaneously if because everybody's not running to Mount Pelier with their little flashcards to hand them to Jim Condos at midnight. And in many other states, probably not true here because our tabulators are so old that Moses was tuning them up when they first bought them. In other states, the tabulators are directly tied, or whatever they have for voting machines from Dominion, are actually directly tied to the internet and to Wi-Fi, and they were not denying this. Somebody went in with a Palm Pilot or something and was able to pick up the signal coming out of the tabulator, for crying out loud.
That is crazy.
And so, I mean, all of this technology is fraught with errors and concern and whatever. And for Jim Condos to go, nothing to see here, folks, move along, is just crazy.
Well, I think it's like, I'm going to interrupt you a lot as we talk about this, Brooke, so I apologize, but
you're not the first.
I keep going. Everything we talk about, it's like, well, that is for sure going to, put a hole in voter confidence. That's going to put a hole in voter confidence. That's going to make people not feel confident. Like, everything we talk about is just like one more piece of evidence for people to be suspect. And then you want us to turn, like, you don't do the audit like you're supposed to for months and months and months. It's not even a full audit like it's supposed to be. All of this is in the law that you're not following. And then you wonder why people don't trust you.
Well, be careful, because they did all that the law required. The law just doesn't require a whole heck of a lot. So, we don't want to say things that are not true. This is how I never get booted.
Correct me.
This is how I never get booted off of Facebook, is I'm very detail oriented. Anyway,
yes, that's good.
So we've talked about how the election used to run, okay?
Yeah.
Where we had early and absentee voting.
Mm-hmm. We chain of command for mailed ballots.
Yeah,
or chain of custody.
Correct. And so everything was local. Okay. And so the legislature, to an extent, understood in 2020 the importance of keeping the town clerks in the loop. Matter of fact, in Act 92, which was the law that loosened up things because of the COVID pandemic, that Jim Condos, at the very least, saw as his big opportunity to slide in universal vote by mail, which is what we're now going to have. We'll talk more about what that means in a minute. But Act 92 did several things. One, it allowed for candidates not to have to go out and get signatures. Of course, then they immediately complained about lots and lots of more candidates getting on, on the state, especially statewide ballot. Well, you normally have to go out and get 500 signatures, which is a task. That's not very hard. Interestingly, and I should tell you, in most states, say New Jersey, you don't need 500 signatures. You need 10,000 signatures to get, to run for governor. I think it's also for U.S. Senate or U.S. House.
So you basically have to prove that people want you.
Well, yeah,
on the ballot
more than 500 people. And now I'll grant you that New Jersey has a bigger population than Vermont, probably by about 10 times. But the other thing is that when you turn in petitions to the Secretary of State in New Jersey, each page of 20 or 25 signatures, the person that's collected those signatures has to sign an affidavit on each page saying that they in fact collected these signatures, and the affidavit must be notarized by a justice of the peace or by a notary public.
Okay.
So every 25 here, you just turn in a pile of papers, with some signatures on them. They don't even really check real carefully to see. I know I questioned during the 2016 election, the signatures on the ballots for several candidates, and they had people from Greenfield on there, and there is no Greenfield in Vermont, so they had gotten some folks that were passing through from Greenfield, Mass, who had happened to sign up, and I mean all sorts of different places where you sign your name, you print your name, you put the town you're from. And there were lots and lots of towns that just didn't exist.
Don't exist.
And
so does nobody check that?
I think they give it a cursory look. If you had one page of a ballot and had the same name signed 25 times, they might call that into question. They might notice. But if you had Huckleberry Finn and Yogi Bear on the same page, they might and had Hollywood written down as where they resided, they might call that into question. But we have a very, very lenient election system right now. Before they did all this new carrying on. But so Act 92, you didn't have to have signatures anymore to get your name on the petition, or get your petition turned in.
Yep.
Jim Condos was pushing for a universal vote by mail, and he wanted to mail all the ballots out. And the legislature said, no, this is a step too far. And in the things I sent you, you can look at Act 92, and it said that let me pull it up here since I have it right here too. It said that the ballots would be mailed by the town clerks. Clearly,
I've got it up on the screen.
Yep. So you're looking for 92. You want to go to page 3. And it said required to protect the election workers and the candidates and everybody carrying out the require mail balloting by requiring town clerks to send out ballots by mail to every registered voter.
Yep.
And so Jim Condos and another part of this said that all of Jim Condos could come up with additional rules and things and stuff, but he had to run it by the governor, and the governor had to agree with him. Well, when Jim Condos started saying, well, we're going to immediately go with universal vote by mail, before we even knew, this is in March of last year, before we even really knew if the pandemic was going to become a really big problem. Governor Scott, who I don't agree with a whole lot quite often, he had a moment's brilliance. He said, we would see how the primary goes, and if this is a big problem. And Jim goes, oh, no. We have to start to prepare right now. He said, I can't wait for Governor Scott to decide anything. So we went back to the legislature, and they passed Act 135. And the only difference was that no longer did the governor have to sign off on Jimmy's wild dreams. Secretary Condos's, important decisions. But they still remained in. If you look at Act 135, it still says they must be mailed out by the town clerks because the town clerk is the one that knows who should be getting ballots and how many they should be getting. You know, the voter checklist are not as up to date, and so at 135, scroll down just a little bit. See, well, you can see there where it says "end agreement with the governor" was crossed out cleverly.
Wow.
Right below it says by mailing ballots, requiring mail balloting by requiring town clerks to send them out. Well, Condos was having no parts of this.
What?
No, well, he collected all the voter checklists up, and he'd already had the ballots, the ballot envelopes all printed up here locally.
Okay.
And before any of this, and so he claimed that, well, we have to start preparing now, and we're going to do universal vote by mail for sure, because he's wanted to do this since Nancy Pelosi came up with it, you know, with her H1 in 2018.
Yep. Where they want to nationalize voting.
Yeah, exactly. Or a lot of rules and make universal vote by mail nationwide.
Yep.
And get rid of voting and a whole bunch of other things. But anyway, so Jim was having Secretary Condos was having none of that. He immediately said, "We're going to do this." And when he was questioned on it, the only credible reason he had for not waiting was he said, "If we spend the $1 million, it's going to wound up costing $2.5 million versus about $750,000 to." Wow. Well, we spend about $750,000 every election year, and about another $200,000 when there's a presidential election involved.
Wow.
But this was going to cost $2.5 million, but the Fed was kicking in the cash. And so Jim said, Secretary Condos said, if we go ahead and prepare for this and then don't do it, if we get audited by the Feds, they may look to claw back the money we spent in preparation for the universal vote by mail. Mm-hmm. And that was the only reason. And of course, there was no indication from the Feds that they were looking to do any clawback on any of the COVID money, including Jim Condos's vote by mail scheme. And so beyond that, so he just started making arrangements. Ultimately, remember, we're worried about COVID now. We don't want to have, we got all these hot spots around us in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And so the ballots were printed here. I think Jet Service Envelope printed them up, and the envelopes were printed up here. Of course, they used lick and stick envelopes, right? Which, if you notice, you don't have lick and stick stamps anymore, because in 1962, there was a big study done by the University of Edinburgh that showed that you could have a lot of germ and virus transmission by licking and sticking the stamps. So we still have moistened adhesive envelopes, and you can tell me till the cows come home, oh, well, everybody gets a sponge out to moisten those envelopes. Yeah, no, everybody licks the. So
yeah, no, they don't. Well, there was a lot of that stuff that just didn't make sense. It's like, okay, so people can safely go in and out of Hannaford all day. People can safely go in and out of Home Depot all day. People can supposedly safely do all of these things in their life, and we're putting them like cattle in smaller and fewer options, or you have fewer and fewer options for going shopping and doing stuff. But I can't spend 5 minutes in my voting booth safely.
But it gets better. It gets better than this, because now he's printed the envelopes up. He's printed the ballots up. He doesn't find a local vendor to mail them out. He's outside of Springfield, Mass. So they truck all this stuff down there to be stuffed by people that are living in Springfield, which was a hot zone at that time for COVID. Then take them over to the postal facility in Springfield to mail them back. Now, the mail does not come from Springfield to Vermont. The distribution center, I know. The distribution center is over in Nassau, New Hampshire, which is another hot spot. So the ballots were trucked from safe old Vermont down to hot zone Massachusetts. They were stuffed and packaged up by a bunch of people that were COVID infected potentially, and probably not. But and my point is that this was all theater. The whole
It really is. It's like
Jim Condos wanted to get his universal vote by mail, and facts and reality be damned, and the governor of the state of Vermont be damned. He was going to do it, and because now they're all saying, "Oh, well, we did it last year and everything went fine." Well, you have no idea whether it went fine or not because you haven't checked anything.
Not to mention that none of the safeguards have been put into place.
Right.
So
there are 3 safeguards. Many states, and I think Oregon was the first, that have universal vote by mail, and I think
they've had that for a while. Like that wasn't last year.
Some of these places don't even have real voting where you go in and vote in the voting booth. I'm not certain of that, but it was my understanding at least Oregon does not. It's all vote by mail.
All vote by mail.
But
okay.
when you have this, you have basically 3 safeguards, and every place has at least 2 of the 3 safeguards, and they are: you have voter ID, that's the gold standard. You have signature comparison cards, okay, and you have up-to-date and current voter checklists, okay. Vermont has no signature cards. Vermont has no voter ID, and Jim Kondo says, "Oh, we'll never have it because it's voter suppression," and
right.
And we'll talk about that again in just a second. But let me get through this, and our voting checklists are just not very good, and I mean, if you followed the news during the election, you had a reporter that used to work for, I think it was WCX, who had moved to like Florida or something, and they sent him the ballot down there. They're not only, I mean, you would think that they would have set up, that they would have told the post office, if these are undeliverable at the address that's on them, return them to sender, do not forward them. They did not. You head over to Middlebury, and I think something's going to come of this.
Hold on. I want you to tell this story, but I just had to laugh. Okay, I'm going to try the thing. This is so everybody watching. I'm still learning all the new little nuances of my software. Yeah, so I'm going to experiment because this is too funny. Is it going to come up? There it is. Fish and Chips said Vermont has stronger safeguards and laws protecting newts and frogs than they do for voting rights. And that is so true. Oh my God, that is so true. I had to just share that. I'm sorry to interrupt. So, okay. So they didn't return to sender. And then you were telling me a story about Middlebury.
Yeah, well, there was a apartment owner in Middlebury who has yet to identify himself by name. Oh. And I think we're going to get around to that. Who said, the post office off a whole pile of these, absentee voter forms in the lobby of my apartment building. And some of the students there just came by and scooped them all up, and who knows, maybe they were just honest folks and went through them and said, "Oh, these folks no longer live here. I'm going to take them right back to the town clerk's office." Maybe not, but there's now a discussion that I don't know who exactly, it probably has something to do with the Ethan Allen Institute, are going to go down and get the matriculation and the graduation information from Middlebury College and take those names and compare them to the names on the voter checklist to see how many of those that were sent out were sent to people who no longer go to Middlebury College, and also to take at the voting results and see how many of those folks that aren't here anymore happen to vote.
That would be really interesting to see.
And sadly time-consuming effort, but the results would be very interesting. I'm sure.
Well, and that's what
be having a few nightmares if anybody decides to actually do that. But
I feel like it's when you say, "Oh, this is going to be a time-consuming endeavor," that is a conversation I have about so many things, and it's another reason why people often either don't fight back or don't get involved because they go, "I don't have time for this. I don't want to do this." They go, "Oh, but my kids and my job or my business or whatever." And there's so many of these things that almost like feel like it's set up for people to disengage. Like you make it so challenging that people just are like, whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm serious about all of this stuff. I mean, and I have to understand, I mention and people joke that I've run for, a lot of different things. And I actually ran as a Democrat a couple of times for governor and attorney general in the primary in 2014 and 16 against Bill Sorrell, the then attorney general, and Putney Pete Shubnam, then governor of the state, and got like 20% of the Democrats in the state to vote for a clearly conservative constitutional Republican. Now, don't get me wrong. Most of them were voting, I was the anybody but Billy, vote, and I got that. And the reason I was doing that was I was trying to demonstrate that Vermont's primary system is at best a beauty pageant. It has no interest or concern. Almost every office, only one person is running. Quite often, the Republicans in 14 and 16 can't even scare up a name to put on the ballot. And the thing that happens when they do that, and I didn't really realize how serious this was until 16, when Jim Condos, Doug Hoffer, and Peter Welsh won the Republican nominations for their offices because the Republicans had not fielded a candidate. And every election, about 1,000 Democrats in an organized fashion go in, and instead of taking the Democratic ballot, take the Republican ballot and write in all of the Democratic candidates on their ballot. And so you have to, if you're a legitimate Republican trying to overcome, they've gotten in late, you didn't get your 500 signatures, and you're trying to get on the general election ballot, you have to be able to overcome this mischief of the Democrats.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to point out anybody can get on the ballot for anything, and so in 18, having seen Welsh and these other people, clearly Democrats, as the Republican champion, I said, this has got to stop.
Yeah.
And I discussed it with several people who I will not name because there were 3 people involved. 2 of them now deny we had the conversation. Fortunately, the third person confessed and said, yeah, they knew about it too. I'm not going to name names here. But so I had said, look, what we need to do is we need to have somebody on the primary ballot for every office.
Yeah.
I said, if you don't have somebody, I'm going to put my name on. And so, and so in 16, it wound up, I think it was originally 7 offices. And at the last minute, Don Turner was convinced to run for lieutenant governor. So at least that was one office I didn't have to cover. But I wound up having to run for U.S. Senate, U.S. House, because Larry Zupan and Anya Tino didn't, announce till the very last minute, long after I had, been on. And they also didn't bother to contact me to ask if maybe I would bow out in their favor. I also was unopposed for Secretary of State, Attorney General, Auditor of Accounts, and Treasurer. Okay. So I won those 4 offices. And oddly enough, I also won U.S. House and U.S. Senate.
The primaries. You won the primaries.
Yeah. So as I had promised, I immediately went to the Secretary of State's office and declined the nominations. So the Republican Party could, under something called nomination by committee process, could put other people on.
Yep.
And they had probably, we have really great, people that are going to run for all these offices. Well, they didn't. Matter of fact, the one person I had really hoped that would get on was that Dan Feliciano would be able to run against Bernie Sanders, because Feliciano actually had some backing from Washington.
So hold on one second, Brooke. This is really great information. Are we leading towards something related to election law?
Oh yeah, and
Okay.
the bottom line. I mean, the bottom line is the party put Zupan and Tino back on, who couldn't even beat me in the primary. How they thought they were going to beat Welsh and Sanders in the general is beyond me.
Well,
They picked two people that didn't even want to campaign to run for treasurer and auditor of accounts.
yeah.
I was still Secretary of State. And they picked a young fellow to run for attorney general who really didn't have a lot of experience. Anyway, but at least we had all Republicans on the general election ballot. And we had similar problems this past time out. So Vermont, we're talking about voter integrity and confidence. Nobody's going to have any confidence in the election until we start having either closed primaries, where you have to
Declare
your party, or better yet, in a small state like Vermont, why not just have a caucus system where the candidates who want to get on the general election ballot go around to the county committees and sell themselves. The county committees or the state committee then has a real convention where the counties all decide who they want to vote for to be the champion in the general election. And then using the same nomination by committee process that the Republicans had to use to replace me in 2018, then can give the slate of candidates to the Secretary of State to be published.
So that's something that we could do in the future
and save ourselves about $250,000 by not conducting the beauty pageant primary that we have
with
currently.
All the nonsense.
But more importantly, it would strengthen all the parties: the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Progressive Party, probably even the Liberty Union Party, for crying out loud, because now people would have to engage with the county committees in order to get their name on the ballot.
And I would think that's something that even the Democrats can get behind, because what we've seen, especially in Burlington, for the city council and mayoral race and stuff like that, is you have progressives also going for the Democrat seat. So they want the progressive endorsement, they want the Democrat endorsement, and they get all their progressive friends to show up to the caucuses or to the whatever, to the nominating events. And then they get the Democratic nod too. And so then they run as a Democrat instead of as a progressive. And everybody's like, oh, I'm just going to vote for the D because that's, but that's they're for poor people and they love everybody. And Republicans are racist. And,
Erica, there is no Democratic Party in the state of Vermont anymore. The progressives 10 or 12 or 15 years ago kidnapped and hijacked the Democratic brand. Well, because they couldn't get elected on their own. They were running, as progressive, and all they would do is sully the Democratic vote, and so they kept the Republicans in a little bit longer. But then they came over, and they all stood. I mean, right now in statewide office, Beth Pierce and Doug Hoffer are dyed-in-the-wool, card carrying progressives, and yet they, dance around, and go into the Democratic functions and things like that.
Yeah.
And the same thing's true down ticket for sure. For in the gubernatorial race, Dave
Zuckerman
is a progressive, and he I guess he actually didn't win in the primary the previous time out. But anyway, there's just a lot of stuff going on that none of it gives anybody confidence.
My friend Paul calls them the Dem Prograts. That's the nickname.
Anyway, so let's get to where we are now.
Actually, we've got a couple of questions that I'm wondering if you can speak to. So one person, Brian said it should be strictly hand counting with observers. What do you think about that? Do other states do that? Is that something that people do elsewhere?
Remembering that what state has less voters than us? I think it's Wyoming. Even Rhode Island, I think, has more people than we do. And Washington D.C., for crying out loud, has more voters than Vermont does. And so it's potentially an issue. Don't forget, we're using equipment that's so old that Moses, hand certified them or whatever. But I think that the important thing is not so much whether they're counted by hand, because counting all the ballots by hand is fraught with errors
That's problems
and
too.
nefarious going ons also. But I think that I lost the little question that they had here, but my thought was that if you have two observers,
there we go.
If you have two observers, which I think you do, hand feeding all of the ballots into the tabulator. Okay. And the biggest thing is the votes that get rejected that are then have to be looked at, figured out, maybe gridded in again, that's where the mischief can really go on. In the primary, this past time out, the Republican primary, there was a question. Linda Joy Sullivan, a Democrat, was trying to run against Doug Hoffer. And the Republicans had asked me to bow out of that race because if I was on, I'd get more, I'd just get more votes, just automatic. Right. So I bowed out, but Linda had promised me that she had a strong following, and she did down towards Rutland for sure and up in the NEK. But we didn't know that a Republican in name only was working with for his buddy Doug Hoffer to get lots and lots of extra votes. We're not naming names here. We're not naming names. I don't like to name lawyers who might show up with papers. But anyway, but the thing was that so Hoffer wins the Republican primary because he had a lot of folks in Thedford and other places that the thing is they're not doing it independently. It's an organized effort to sully the reputation and the brand of the Republicans, being conducted by primarily progressives,
right,
Democrats. And so Linda Joy winds up not getting the thing, getting the primary vote. And people are going, what the heck's going on here? And the reason I've told you all this, because it was very, very close. Okay. It was 100 vote difference. Now we're going to get in the weeds for just a second here. Doug Hoffer, I think, got 1,100 votes, and Linda Joy Sullivan had gotten 1,000 votes. But there were 300 overvotes. Okay? Now, do you know what an overvote is? And I'll tell you, just because even if you
let our listeners know what that is.
Right. An overvote is where more votes have been cast than there are opportunities to vote for that race. So say up in Burlington, there's a district race, and the thing says vote 2 out of 3. Well, if somebody grids in all 3, that's an overvote. Say that there's a race and there's 2 names in it, and somebody grids in both names, that's an overvote.
That's an overvote.
But in the Republican race for all accounts, there was no name published. There was only 1 spot on the ballot to vote. How do you get an overvote? How do you get more than the allowable number of votes for that office? You can't. As a matter of fact, I went to the canvassing committee meeting and asked sending that, and he goes, "We don't know." I said, "Well, it might be interesting now." I speculated, is it possible that people were writing in the name Linda Joy Sullivan, and some either naive or nefarious folks were saying, "Ooh, that person's voting for more than one person. Let's call that the overvote." I can't come up with any other way you could have an overvote. And you didn't have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or 20 or 25 or 50. You had 200 and almost 300 overvotes. Well, what if half of those were really votes for Linda Joy Sullivan and nobody took a look at it? Linda Joy Sullivan would have won that, and so there's all sorts of mischief that goes on, especially in Vermont's primaries. So anyway,
and that's what actually somebody just said, and I was contacted about this. There is a audit going on in Barrie for the city council.
I heard. I haven't followed this, but I heard there was.
Yep, I don't know about it either.
The losing candidate actually has offered to pay for the recount. And the city council said, no, never mind. And the difference is within, I think it's the 2%. The law specifies that the law automatically be a recount. if the difference between the winner and the loser is less than, I think it's 2%. And this is within the margin of error. And the city council doesn't want to.
Wow.
So anyway, we're going to run out of time here, and I want to talk about the craziness that we're now going to have going on. The legislature has now passed H15,
Okay.
and now we're going to have universal vote by mail. Jimmy Condos's voters gone wild,
So this is officially, it's officially the law of the land that Vermonters have to do.
The House has signed off on it, and I think the Senate has indicated they're going to go along with it, maybe with some little, sanding off of the edges. But so now Jim Condos is going to mail out ballots to everybody and anybody, living, dead, living here, living someplace else.
Did they, in this new law, did they at least put all the safeguards in that we've talked about, like cleaning up the voter rolls?
No. Jim says, we don't have those safeguards in Vermont, but don't worry. Jim Condos is on the job here. We're going to do just fine. And so we have no voter ID. We have no updated checklists. We have no
open primaries.
Matter of fact, over in Berrytown, and they said in the previous election, and this I guess is now standing orders for the new election, if you don't date it, if you don't print your name on the return thing, and as long as you don't have to even sign it, as long as you've made your mark, meaning if you put an X where the signature goes, that's sufficient. And those are the instructions they've been giving. It's just crazy. I say let's save. Oh, and the other thing is, it's now going to cost $2 million to conduct the election with all this vote by mail carrying on, whereas it used to cost about $600,000.
We can't even afford that. We're broke.
Or but Jim Condos, our Secretary of State, is getting his heart's desire. He is going to be the debutante at the ball for the Democrats from now on out, because this is what they want. This is what they want, because this is the way that you can forever secure Democratic wins in the election.
So here's okay. Oh my God, I can't even handle it. I'm going to be so upset, because this is the thing is, I even know, like, I'm going to try to tell this story without giving any information away. I know somebody who owns a store that told me a story about how they have people come in to get like things notarized or whatever. I'm going to have to take a lot of information out to make sure this stays anonymous. But basically, this person told me that they know there is a fake ID ring, at least in Burlington, where people are getting fake IDs, and they know because they see the IDs and it's the same names and addresses and whatever, just with a different picture on it. And I was like, why have you not turned them into the police? Oh, well, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so that there are people committing fraud here in the state of Vermont. You know that they're doing it to get food stamps and to get all of these services, and they're not even legal citizens. So I already know that there are illegal people of some variety that live in the Burlington area that have IDs that were given to them by somebody who was hustling.
You don't even have to go that far. The Department of Motor Vehicle, through Motor Voter, has been giving all sorts of people valid credentials. And don't forget, Motor Voter, when you sign up, when you register your car, when you get a new driver's license, you're being put on it. And the reason you know this is some of the people it was happening to were resident aliens living who had applied and are allowed to have driver's licenses. The one thing they can't do is be registered to vote or have it appear that they voted in our elections, because it's grounds for deportation. So they were coming up and saying, no, I did not want to be registered to vote. And so we know that the Motor Voter thing is just, not only giving people who aren't qualified to vote, but also, if you have a driver's license and you're a woman and you get married, and God forbid you actually change your name to your husband's name. I know, how politically incorrect is that?
How dare you?
So now Pamela Myers now suddenly getting two absentee votes, Pamela Myers and Pamela Smith, or her
Yep.
husband's name.
Yep.
And they can't detect any of this. They have no safeguards. They have no checks and balances. They have nothing. And
Okay.
I it's all just mind blowing. Now earlier somebody had said, "Oh, well, how do you challenge this? How do you stop this?"
Yeah. What do we
Well, I've
do?
gone to court. I went to court to try to stop Jim Condos from doing nefarious things. Two things he said he was going to do that would violated the law, even as amended by Act 65 and as modified by Act 135. Universal vote by mail conducted by his office instead of the town clerks, as specified in Title 17, and also as continuing to be specified in Act 92 and 135. And the second thing was he was going to have universal vote or allow unbridled vote harvesting. And vote harvesting is where people who are not authorized under the law as it used to exist, which was mainly the justice of the peace and the members of the Board of Civil Authority in your town, if you were handicapped or couldn't get out or couldn't get back or could be called, and they would come out and collect your ballot. Generally, two people, a Democrat and a Republican, would go out, or a whole justice of the peace would go out.
Can you guys hear that?
I heard
in
a
the
jet fly
background?
through. That's not on. That's on your end. I
We're
live out in the middle of the woods. Nothing is within a mile of me, so nothing is going on here unless you hear a little mouse running across the anyway.
The rain is just like slamming into the window. I'm like, I wonder if people can hear this. Okay, so wait, you said that this is now allowed? So under this new law that has passed the House,
they're allowing. See, Jim Condo said, "Oh, well, we're not allowing. We've put stipulations on this. A politician can't go out and collect ballots that his name is on the ballot for, except if they're his relative or a friend or whatever." And so they had some back off on that, but that was no consideration at all, because what it didn't say is anybody that's running for office can't go out and collect ballots. They only couldn't collect the ballots that their name was on. So say a state senator, pick somebody, Joe Benning from over to Caledonia County.
Caledonia, yeah.
He could go over to Barry, which is in Washington County, and collect all the ballots he wants because his name's not on the,
Well, and who cares if it's the candidate? Other people can go do it. Special interest groups.
People from VPRIG and these other organizations that pay solicitors all the time to go out and do things, get petitions signed to, like have the state pay for the solar panels, and they pay those people to collect the ballots.
Yeah.
Nothing in our law prevents vote harvesters for being paid for their product. Now they put a stipulation in. A vote harvester can only collect 25 ballots. Okay. And I'm sorry, can only turn in 25 ballots. But we're not registering the vote harvesters. We don't have to know who they are. When they go to the town clerk's office with their 25 ballots, they don't have to identify who they are. So they could go to the little town of Washington where I live and turn in 25 ballots, go down to East Barry,
turn in 25
ballots.
Because you're not registering. You're not demarcating it. You're not, having a notary sign it.
Worse than that, they could pick up 100 ballots. And in the process of picking up the ballots and talking to folks, they go, "Oh, Joe Smith here is a Republican, and Molly Yards over here is a Republican. Maybe." Well, so they didn't get to the ballot box. Oh my God! And people go, "Oh, nobody would ever do that." When we
why do we? Oh my God! I can't.
Because we're in Wonderland here.
Why do people trust people? Why do people trust people with this stuff? I do not understand.
Because they're gullible. Because they're told, "Oh, we're in this, the Wizard of Oz, Vermont here," and people. And that's a good trait in a way, that people are honest and trusting, but they don't understand that we're living amongst the thieves. This is like the thieves' den when it comes to.
Well, and this is.
I'll give you a quick story. I'll give you a quick story that'll bring this all home. When my wife Donna and I moved up to Vermont 30 years ago. Mark McDonald, who is still our state senator for Orange County, where we live, came around. He introduced himself. He said, "Oh, you want to get signed up to vote?" And so he filled out the the voter registration thing for my wife and I. And he was pleasant to us. We talked. He clearly understood we were conservatives and most probably Republicans, and we understood that he was a Democrat, but seemed like he'd be a nice guy. He's very, talkative and cheerful.
Yeah.
About weeks before the election's coming up, my wife said about voting, and I said, "Well, the guy picked it up." She was talking about gullible, she says, "Are you sure he turned them in?" I go, "Well, I guess he did." I said, "But I'll stop down at the town clerk's office and double check." No way. And so fortunately we quickly filled them out again and gave them to Carol Davis, our town clerk. But and later on, when I approached him about this, in a friendly manner, and he just kind of chuckled, and it didn't say anything, but it was like, "Well, what did you expect?" And stuff goes on all the time. It's all the time. And
I mean, there are literally anybody that thinks that, like, oh, well, we play things by the rules here, and people in Vermont are integrists. I have one of my neighbors he came on the show and told this story, so I'm comfortable telling it again. Michael Lee lives in my neighborhood in the New North End. He's Asian. He ran for city council. He is a business owner, accountant, super bright guy, beautiful family. Like, he's like the picture of who you want for a city councilor. And he checks off some of the intersectional boxes. So we think that, hopefully, the fact he will get to be elected on his character, right? Because of whatever, but also he's Asian. So we want representation and all this stuff. Someone started a rumor that he invented a pill to turn gay people straight, to try to damage his name or whatever for the election. Like, if you think people in Vermont, especially when it comes to the elections, have integrity, you have to have fallen and bumped your head, because they're absolutely willing to cheat to get the Democratic nomination.
You fell and you died.
It just is like, you can't be serious. They do stuff like this. I'm releasing a video about this in a couple of days, maybe tomorrow or Sunday. But like, Molly Gray has already started her campaign for Senate. So it was so obvious last year that she was an implant from the Democratic Party. She checked all the boxes. Oh, my dad was in the military and I'm a do. And now she ran for lieutenant governor after not doing anything in the state of Vermont for decades, not caring, not even being a resident. And now she's lieutenant governor. They poured millions, like that, all this money into her campaign, and now she's running for Senate. If you think that the Democrats and progressives will play by the rules and be dishonest, you're fooling yourself.
But Pat Leahy hasn't died yet. Pat Leahy will only not run for the Senate if he's no longer breathing and upright. I mean, who knows? I mean, of course, you hear rumors that Phil Scott envisions himself as going down as U.S. Senator, and I'm going, yeah. Okay. Does that mean, because that'll really mean that we have Jason Gibbs as our senator from Vermont? That's a little inside baseball. Jason Gibbs is Phil Scott's Secretary of Administration, I guess.
Is it Jason Gibbs' fault that I don't have a pardon yet? That's a conversation for another day. Oh, it makes me so mad. Almost 3 years, my pardon has been sitting on Governor Scott's desk, not considered.
Did you send him a big contribution yet?
No.
Oh.
Oh, is that what it'll take?
That wasn't hard to figure out, was it?
Okay, so hold on.
Money talks, nobody walks.
Michael said we're screwed. He's listening to us and he says we're screwed. Oh. I don't think we're screwed yet, Michael. I don't think we're screwed yet.
We didn't complete the conversation about.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Doing misconduct. So I go to court. Well, I know Interestingly enough, the only way you can file a pre-election complaint about the election process is under 245, the administrative complaint process, and you have to file it with Secretary Condos because he's the first adjudicator in the process. Now, other parts of the law say that you're not supposed to be judging when people complain about your own actions. You can't go to court suing the judge for having run into your car, and that judge hears the case. It tends not to work out real well. But Secretary Condos, in my complaint, I said, you may decide that you have a irreconcilable conflict of interest, so I expect you to contact the Attorney General's office or contact the Superior Court judge to have somebody assigned in your place to be the arbiter. He did neither. Now, the other thing he could have ruled right away. Said, "Oh no, I'm good to go. You're completely wrong." And if he'd done it like within a couple of weeks after I filed the complaint, because in the complaint I had said, while the rules that your office has made up say you have 90 days to decide this, by 90 days the ballots will already be in the mail. And so I said, I expect to answer within a couple of weeks, no later than a month. And a couple of weeks after that, I contacted J.P. Isabel, who's a functionary in the elections department, and it was on other business. Oh, matter of fact, I was trying to get a hold of the first administrative directive, the thing that I sent you, and because it had just been released the day before, and so J.P., who I know, I was asking him to email me a copy, and so he said, sure. I said, how are they coming on my complaint? He goes, I don't think we're really planning on answering your complaint. He said, the opinion around here is that this was just a necessary step before you could go to Superior Court. That I had to file, but that they really didn't think that I was really expecting them to give me an answer. Well, of course I was. And so I said, okay, well, I waited a couple more weeks. And when it's forthcoming, I went and filed an interlocutory appeal. Lots of legal mumbo jumbo here, and all that means is you're filing an appeal to the next level in the process before the first adjudicator, in this case, Mr. Condos, had ruled on my complaint. So I file. The Attorney General, who represents the Secretary of State, takes a full 21 or 20 days, 23 and 3/4 hours before they answer the complaint. And when they answer it, they say, oh, Mr. Paige was premature. He should have waited until the Secretary of State issued his determination, which he hadn't as of the date they were answering. But they said, oh, but we're issuing an answer tomorrow, and in fact, the Attorney General's office, I'm sure, wrote the answer to my complaint, but it couldn't be released until after they had filed their thing saying, oh, Mr. Paige was premature. So then we get into this thing about, now there's like 14 days left till the ballots are going to be kicked out, and so I make my arguments that I wasn't premature because Mr. Condos shouldn't have been, deciding this anyway. And in any case, his first administrative directive basically answered my concerns in the negative. And it if nothing else, Secretary Condos could have said, well, my answer is my first administrative directive, but they didn't do any of that. So they burn up a lot of
words. So
it's all.
Can you summarize the story?
Yeah, it's all word salad. It's all word salad. Funny, in an earlier case when I was
they sent it to the AG. Nobody's answered.
Well, in an earlier case that I had, I was complaining about Jim Condos letting unconstitutionally unqualified candidates onto the Vermont primary and general election ballot. And in that case, they did the exact same thing. They always do the same thing. And matter of fact, young fellow who was a very nice assistant attorney general, Todd Delos, he and I were having a little meeting. I think it may have been a bit of lunch together. And he said, Brooke, you have to understand and this is when Bill Sorrell was still running the show down there. He said, we take the position that we want to keep a case unripe, meaning not yet adjudicatable until it becomes moot, meaning till the case can no longer.
We heard this about
it's in
everything that
spades
we
with everything
heard
about
this year. It's either like you don't have standing, and then if you do have standing, then there's some other procedural thing, and then
this was the other part of what Todd said. He said we try to make sure we keep these unripe until they become moot, and we use standing, subject jurisdiction, and venue arguments that you don't have any of these to keep you from ever getting your case answered.
Wow.
And each time I wind up before the state Supreme Court, and they go, well, you have some valid points here. Cases become moot with the passage of time. And even if you're asking for an expedited case, if you're asking for injunctive relief, none of it means a thing. Matter of fact, when they release this H-15 in a couple of weeks, I will go to court immediately complaining about the impropriety and the lack of security in the process in an attempt to make it through the courts before they're deciding to mail the ballots out next summer. And who knows if I'll be successful. I mean, I started this current case that we're talking about in June. And it wasn't until, let's find it here. I got it right in front of me. Here you go. April 9th. 10 months later that I finally got the state Supreme Court to say, yeah, it's, And,
I just think it's amazing.
These things can't, my point is these things can't be dealt with in court, because the court is ill-equipped to handle them in a timely fashion, and the judges do not want to become involved in a political question. They just it's like the plague. It's like the kryptonite to Superman. They just don't want to get near it.
Okay, so I wanna bring up a couple of questions before we go.
Yeah.
You definitely
one way you can solve this is by electing me to be Secretary of State next summer.
All right, so that's number one.
Yep.
So before we get off, I want to talk about, we need to give people some hope, because this is all very depressing. And there's a lot of these conversations that are very depressing. And what I always come back to is the only way to solve this is for people to actually start participating. And when I say that, I always get pushback, and people say, oh, well, it doesn't matter anyway, because I do participate and look at what happens. And I'm like, stop being stop being a baby and get out and do something. It's not enough to be on Facebook complaining and posting memes about whatever. You ran for 7 offices one year. I've been running for office for 2 years straight, basically. And then getting out, writing articles, encouraging other people, telling other people about it, trying to encourage other people and bring them into the fold. I have no problem shaming people. I will shame people all day when they're like, oh, well, I don't vote anymore because what does it matter? And I go, well, it definitely doesn't matter because you don't vote. And if all the regular people who don't believe in all the nonsense they're trying to do don't vote, then we're really screwed. And so everything that is wrong is your fault. Like, I want the weight and the gravity of responsibility to just punch people in the face. Like, everything that is wrong with the state of Vermont is because of every single person that doesn't vote, doesn't run for school board, doesn't apply to be on a committee or a commission, doesn't show up to their PTA meeting. Like, if you don't like that Black Lives Matter flags are flying at your school, when was the last time you went to a school board meeting and actually participated? You don't like critical race theory? When was the last time you went and actually did something about it? You don't like the fact that our voting laws have a problem? Are you a ward clerk? Are you on the board of registered voters? What do you do? And if you don't do anything, then everything that is wrong is your fault. Yeah. And I don't care how many times you've tried. Like, oh my God, this time I ate, I didn't get full. Therefore, I'm not going to eat anymore because this one time I ate, it wasn't successful. Like, you don't do that in any other area of your life. If it's important, you fight.
understand that I've run for a lot of different things, and some people go, yeah, well, you never won anything. I go, well, I've won Justice of the Peace in my town a couple times, and I did okay, but understand when I'm running against Jim Condos or running against TJ Donovan, yeah, you're right, I didn't win, but I got 800 or 80,000 people to vote for me,
Now imagine if the Republican Party, especially the National Republican Party, actually spent some money to take back our seats.
The thing that, and remember, I keep a focus on state and local here, and understand that people go, well, why do you keep doing this? I go, well, two things. One, I'd like to win. That would be kind of neat. But beyond that, it gives me the ability to tell people what I think in an organized fashion. It gives me the opportunity to provide conservative Republican values, to not look like I'm, people look at me, and some Democrats love to think, oh, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, I go, okay, prove it, first of all. I worked in West Philadelphia, where it's like 95% minorities, not just blacks, but Hispanics and Asians and whatever. I worked there for 30 years. I had no problems with anybody.
It doesn't matter. I'm married to a black man and I'm a racist. Like, it doesn't matter what's true or not. They don't care.
Oh, because it's not true. I mean, you look at everything they yelled about Donald Trump, and I was never a big Donald Trump devotee until I looked at all the people that hated him, and his credibility popped up quite a bit. These are this guy's enemies. How bad can he be? It's just like, Lord have mercy. Totally. The funny thing was, for all the criticism, people go, oh, you support Donald Trump. Back in 2012, I wrote a wonderful little piece that you can still find on the internet. It was called Character Matters, Even If You Are the Governor. And in it, the first third of it compared Peter Shumlin with Donald Trump and all of their negative qualities that they shared in person. It accidentally got printed by V.T. Digger back when Bob Brown was still the editor there. And
that's amazing.
Little Annie Galloway has regretted it to this day. She won't even talk to me anymore. It's just she and I are like oil and water. Yeah. But anyway, so the thing is, you can't give up. What was the old Frank Sinatra, about the ant and the rubber tree plant and the ram and the dam? You just have to keep going, because if you give up, you're right, it's over. It's over. If you keep slugging it out and continuing on, because the problems are created by the members of the House of Representatives and the senators in this state House of Representatives, state Senate. They're the ones that making all these goofy ideas and coming up with all this horse hockey. I mean, Jim Condos, Secretary Condos, runs over there with his little basket of new ideas for the election, and they just rubber stamp whatever, Yep. Good old Secretary Condos, he couldn't be trying to do anything. It's less than 200% quality stuff here,
Yeah.
Well,
and somebody made a comment and said, many of us want to be more involved, but fear professional retribution. Sad but true. You know what? I don't care about that either. And anybody who uses that as an excuse makes me super mad, because no.
Be careful. No. I can understand if you're.
No. Let me finish.
Take a look at the guy.
Let me finish.
All right.
Let me finish. I don't care. And if you are willing to turn in your integrity, if you're willing to let go of your integrity out of fear, then you're just obfuscating. Like, they had the whole purpose of the racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe label is to silence good people. And so you're just laying down and taking it. And more to the point, why should somebody like me or you, Brooke, why should I sacrifice or put my professional stuff on the line for other people if you won't do it for you? If you won't put your professional life and your livelihood and your everything else on the line for you, then why should I put it on the line for you? I can't win if people are too afraid to admit that they're voting for me. You can't win if people won't put a yard sign on their lawn. We can't be successful if all the conservatives keep their mouth shut. The reason we're losing is because of fear, because people are too afraid to stand up for themselves. I don't care anymore, Brooke. I really don't. I really, really don't.
Take two quick examples. And there's a fellow down in Barrie that runs a sandwich shop, and he caught stealing the Trump flag off of somebody's front lawn, and he was flying I think a BLM flag or the gay pride flag on the front of his business. And he started to suffer some damage for that. Likewise, the guy at the end of the street runs a fancy bakery, and he was a big Trump supporter. Both these people are getting done and maybe in trouble with their businesses. And I can identify with the perils that they're experiencing. And I think when you say, well, you have to be willing to, sacrifice your livelihood and your home and your family, I'm not quite sure that we have enough patriots to do that. Okay. We don't have enough John Adams and folks like that who are willing to go to the mat. Okay. And maybe we just need a lot of people that are willing to vote for other people, crazy bastards like me, who are retired and have put enough money aside that they can't hurt me. There's nothing they can do to me. I'm not going to do anything.
That's the thing. But that's the problem, because then nobody says anything. I mean, it's great. You can run all day, but if nobody is willing to share that they're voting for you in the first place so that more people can get to know who you are, if everybody just
share
lets
privately, they can each talk in their circle of friends.
No, they can't, because then it goes to the school boards, and then they let the school boards do all the nonsense that they do because they're too afraid. I'm just not buying it. I'm not letting that go. I'm sorry. People can hate me if they want to, but that is wrong. It is absolutely wrong.
We will agree to disagree.
Sorry, there is some huge ass monster looking bug that literally crawled up onto my foot, and it's just like staying there now.
Get it.
I can't. There's nothing to hit it with. Anyway, we have digressed from election integrity. So let's get back to that. What can people do in the meantime to stay up with you and the case? Do they need to just write to their legislators and say this H15 you said? Well, tell them to get rid of this crap, or what's the deal?
My concerns over 92-135 have now come to an end. Okay. The Supreme Court has ruled. I asked for reconsideration. They said, we got out of this. We're not getting back in. And so now we'll move on and have to take a look. I guess there's still time to contact your senator or state representative and ask them to reconsider signing off on H15. We can hold it in abeyance until in 2013. The law says that the Secretary of State will take a look at all of the and make a determination whether this is a safe and effective way to conduct the elections. Of course, in the interim, he's got to conduct the 2022 election without having ever taken a look to see if it's safe and effective and trustworthy. So we're going to have an election. I always like to say I picture Jim Condos as being the one of the hosts there on Dancing with the Stars, and if he had his way, our voting here in the state of Vermont would be by telephone, with people, whoever can have their supporters call in the most times in a fixed period of time is the winner. No, don't worry about duplicate voting or the phone lines being busy and you have to call back later. And that's sad because there's so many other things we haven't talked about tonight that are also problems with the new vote by mail. If you show up at the polls on election day and you go to vote and they say, oh, you already, you go, no, I didn't. They say, well, fill out this form, we'll let you vote again.
That happened in Burlington. And so, no, that happened in Burlington.
All over the state. Now the thing is, what they should do in the real world is hold your ballot provisionally. They put it in an envelope and set it aside. But there's no sense in doing that because they're not holding the mailed in ballots until after the election. They're opening them up a month in advance. So the mystery ballot that came in that said it was from you, that wasn't, has already been opened. It's been anonymized, meaning it's been separated so they can't identify, what the vote was, run through the machine and already counted. So even if you are allowed to vote and you vote for the candidates of your choice, probably the vote that was put in your name earlier was for people you weren't really in favor of. And so now your real vote's been nullified by votes on the opposite side of the score pad. I mean, it's just all crazy. And that's another thing that in states that have universal vote by mail, they don't count the ballots until the election's over. So if there's any duplications, those can be properly adjudicated or figured out. And you have none of that. You have no safeguards in Jim Condos, Secretary Condos' elections gone wild. I mean, it's just, it is. I mean, it is. It's just crazy. Yeah, it's like Condos, Secretary Condos going, oh, we can't have voter ID because it's voter suppression. Those poor Black and Asian and poor people, it's a wonder they can figure out how to get out of bed in the morning. We can't.
Oh my God, it's so racist. It's like we're racist if we want voter ID laws, but their excuse for not having voter ID laws is because they're too dumb or poor to figure out how to get IDs. And it's like,
or have no,
how is that not racist?
No way of showing up. The thing that's amazing is, well, then aren't we racist or sexist or whatever if we require them to have a driver's license to drive a car, if they have ID to go get a bank account,
if they have a job,
if they go to get a job, to go down and buy a pack of Lucky Strikes at the Jiffy Mart, to what are some of the other things? Oh, to go get a bottle of Johnny Walker over at the Beverage Baron.
Newports and
get on an airplane. We require all manner of. You have to have ID to do all manner of things. Get on the welfare rolls. Get WIC payments or
everything.
Women, infant, and children. Everything you have to have ID. Open a bank account. I mean, this is why I say earlier, Jimmy wants to run the bank with no ID and no closing the vault up in there. But that, so let's have it one way or the other. Let's have no ID for anything, I mean, and just because that kid that looks like he's 8 years old says he's 18 and he wants to vote, why should
that's good enough for me because everybody is honest.
People,
that's why we let criminals out of jail instead of keeping them in jail.
Well, why did we put them in jail in the first place? Because they're all honest. They all must have just been accidentally convicted because they were standing over that dead body with a hatchet with blood all over it.
Whoopsie. Oh my God. Okay. We could just go on and on. So this is a terrible idea. Everybody needs to write to their senators and representatives and tell them that
No. Call them up and get them on the phone. If you write to them, they have a big circular file in their office where all those letters go immediately, probably unopened. So you've got to call them, email them, contact the sergeant of arms and ask that in personal message you dictate the message and the pages will deliver your message to them. That we need to hold the new law H15 in abeyance. H15 in abeyance for further consideration and to have safeguards added to the law. The universal vote by mail is not my particular preference because I think it takes away from the interest in the election. Let's return to election day as best we can instead of having election month, I mean, now you can vote 45 days before the election. The candidates haven't even gotten out and gotten their message out. So you're already voting for people before you even know what the devil they stand for.
That's another crazy thing. Oh my God.
Well, because in Jim Condos' world, the only thing that matters is, do they have a D after their name? If they have a D after their name, just make your little mark, and if you can't sign that,
that's literally what they do.
Envelope, just put an X on the envelope and we'll be good to go. You know,
good Lord,
I mean,
Jesus, help us. Okay.
He's about the only one we got left.
For real. And it really is. That's why I get crap. And hey, Erica, don't shame and demean the people you want to vote for you. And I'm like, I know, but people need to know. Like, they have to do something.
Yeah. Let me say that I have tried to be pretty light and jovial through our conversation this evening.
Yeah.
But there's nothing funny or
that's true.
lighthearted. I mean, the thing is, if you become just, down in the dumps over this and like some naysayer, first of all, nobody pays attention anymore. But this is deadly serious. And Vermont is not going to have an election where the real decision and the selections of the voters is truly reflected in the final vote count until these problems are dealt with. We can't have an election that lacks integrity, lacks security, and what we had before didn't seem real good until we see what they want to give us next. Now it seems like the gold standard.
Even worse. Well, and to pile even on top of that, Burlington just voted in ranked choice voting, which we used to
let them do that.
I hope not.
I thought either the House or the Senate said, "Nah, you can't do that."
We'll see. Because I haven't heard that.
They had that in Maine. And the Maine Supreme Court said you can't do that except for the one election the Maine Supreme Court didn't have any control over, which was their U.S. House race, I think House or maybe also Senate. And so the guy that got the most votes in the Maine, I guess it was the House race, didn't get it because by using rank order voting. He didn't get enough third and fourth place votes to make him somehow they put it into the mystery black box sausage maker.
We had ranked choice voting in Burlington and it went bad, so they repealed it, and then they just put it on the ballot again.
It doesn't go bad. It can't go good. It's bad only bad.
Oh my God.
It's bad by design.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So before we go, yes. I was totally going to do a pitch for Michael Valdez and Top Cat Express earlier in the show, and we got distracted. So I'm going to do a little bit now. Michael, if you're watching, I promise I'll do it again next week. Yeah. So our show sponsor today is Top Cat Express. Top Cat Express is owned by my friend Michael Valdez, who is awesome. Okay, so this is not your typical taxi. It's not your typical Uber driver. If you need a ride across town to the airport, to Massachusetts, or anywhere else, you can hire Top Cat Express. Now, he has been driving professionally for decades, and he's driven for presidents, for dignitaries. He's driven buses and tour buses and all of that kind of stuff. He has tons of experience. So you're not going to have Michael show up in his nice black car and have it smell like your Uber driver's dinner. You ever get an Uber driver and you can tell what they ate for dinner, or they were smoking in the car earlier, or they're listening. Like, I had one guy pick me up and he was listening to gangster rap. And I was like, I don't know what about me makes you think that I want to listen to your song talk about bees and hoes and doing drugs and stuff, but I'm not about that. So
Erica, what is his service area?
So he does, as far as I know, he does everywhere. So he's in Burlington a lot for the airport, but I remember him telling me a story about how he drove somebody down to Massachusetts. So he's based in Stowe. But I think probably anywhere in that central Vermont area, you could definitely give him a call. So his website, Top Cat Express, where is the contact? Here we go. There's a phone number, email, a contact page. You can schedule your ride ahead of time. Let's see. Oh, there's a pricing on here. Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah. Okay. So if you want to ride to Boston, it's $350. That seems like a pretty good deal.
So primarily from the Stowe area and Burlington area, it looks like.
It seems like that. That's there. He would probably be able to do somewhere else. You would just need to like order it or something like that. But I have specifically, when I come back to town, I always call Michael. I don't want to get off the plane and get into an Uber or take the bus or whatever. I want a ride that I know is safe, comfortable, and clean. So if you need a ride anywhere, call Top Cat Express, Michael Valdez at, let's say the number out loud in case for those of folks that are just listening instead of watching. It's 802-495-9505. It's 802-495-9505. Call and get your ride today. Okay, there we go. So, Mr. Paige, Brooke, where, if people want to follow you and see what you're up to, follow you on the case and see what's going on, where is the best place for them to either reach out or follow?
Well, the best place to track me down, I guess, is on Facebook.
Okay.
It's just H with no period, Brooke Paige. And if you friend me, I'll friend you back or whatever. Other than that, you can contact me by email at DonnaP@Solvernet. Okay. Or you can give me a call at home. I know this is a risky adventure on my part, but if you have questions or concerns, you ready for it? 802-883-2320. And I'll guarantee you I'm the only politician that gives you this home phone number. Be happy to chat, When we get into the election cycle, I'll be easy.
Well, and here we go. I'm going to just show everybody. I'm going to show everybody your page really quick. Hang on. So they know.
Oh my God.
If you go somewhere, look for the man in the top hat. Okay. If you're at a political event, look for the man in a 3-piece and a top hat.
Anyway, so there you go.
I love it. Thank you, Brooke, for coming on and chatting with us today. Probably going to have you on again in the future just to make sure that we're keeping up on this, and because people have so many questions. And I think that, in our conversation today and the one we had, getting geared up for this, I just got knocked over by how little integrity is being infused into this process and how just everything is set up for failure.
Nobody is demanding it. Nobody's saying, wait a second, what are you doing here? How can you say, oh, nobody's going to try to steal the election. Nobody's going to do anything wrong. We're a bunch of patron saints up here. We'll take a look at the EB5 mess up there in the
Northeast Kingdom.
Yeah, Northeast Kingdom, and over to Jay's Peak and all of that. Yeah, they're a bunch of honest folks. We cheated like 1,000 poor immigrants who were trying to get their green cards out of $100,000 a piece, and just the other day I read in the news that the state was involved all along and knew all this carrying on was going on. So I know. Anyway, it was my absolute pleasure to come and chat with you.
Thank you.
I'm always accessible. If people have a meeting or something, they'd like a keynote speaker who says what he's thinking, and I'll be happy to come out and chat with you about election issues or state finance issues or education issues. We are in a passel of trouble here in Vermont. Ooh. And I don't want you deciding, like so many people have, to throw up your hands in dismay and move to New Hampshire or North Carolina or Florida or Texas or Arizona, as so many of my friends have. Let's stay and fight, not cut and run. Yep. My name is Brooke Paige, and I would try to save Vermont. I'm a constitutional conservative, and I'm not going anyplace, despite all the suggestions from the other side. God bless and stay well.
I love it. That's awesome, Brooke. Oh my God, I smashed the crap out of this bug and it just got up and started crawling again.
Show it to us. He can be your co-star.
It even got up on its like hind legs and went like this at me. Oh my God. What
How do you know it
are
wasn't?
you?
How do you know it wasn't a Republican voter? Or maybe one of Jim Condo's is Democrat.
Oh my God. It's like got pincers. It's like this long. Everything in Texas can kill you, I swear to God. I'm in Texas at the moment. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. This thing is freaking me out.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And thank all your viewers and pod people here for sticking with us through the hour and 45 minutes we have chatted along
so
here.
much good information. All right. Thank you. Hey, Brooke, hold on with me 1 second. I'm going to do our outro. Thank you all for being with us this week, and we'll see you next Thursday.